Can you have the best of intentions and still be problematic? The answer is yes. Join me and Louiza Doran for a candid conversation about intention versus impact. In this episode, you'll learn why it's important to take responsibility for your action, why it's important to own your reaction, questions to ask yourself to shift from a state of reaction to a state of learning, and how to recognize all the ways in which you're bypassing your own shit by calling people out on their shit. Did I mention that this episode topic was inspired by a Baby Yoda meme? We'll dive into that as well. Now, who is Louiza? Louiza's work is as multifaceted as she is. She is a coach, an educator, and a social impact strategist. Her coaching and consulting practice honors her passion for both social equity and personal empowerment. The two branches of her work naturally bleed into each other. Louiza's unique approach is a holistic approach that considers the person, their identity, and their experiences, as well as the communities in which they live. She uses her training, education, resources, and personal journey to create a signature system that supports, edifies, and guides her clients through a process that allows them to take an honest look at their lives and arms them with the tools necessary to begin living in alignment with their vision, values, and belief systems. Louiza's goal is simple. She's here to help people heal through decolonizing their beliefs in order to create relationships, businesses, careers, and lives that reflect their values and honor who they are and how they want to live. Now, it is time to discuss intention versus impact with Louiza Doran. Hey, thought leaders, I am back with a guest who might be familiar to you. She goes by the name of Louiza Doran, and she was here before, and she's here again to bring her spicy charm to you.
Oh, that spicy charm.
Spicy charm.
Yes. I just call it spice, but I like it when you add charm to it.
I know that just kind of rolled out of my mouth. That wasn't planned at all, but yeah, you've got a spicy charm about you.
I like it.
So I feel like that should be your cereal. Spicy charm.
You're opening up a whole rabbit hole that I'm about to dive into. All right, y'all. When you see a full apparel line called Spicy Charm, just know there will be a thank you note to Ruby at the bottom.
I better get a lifetime supply of that.
For sure. Of all the things. Whatever you want, girl. Whatever you want.
Amazing. So we've come together today to talk about some shit that's been going down in the online space.
Yeah.
And I could have talked about this alone, but I needed someone with some spice to hold this conversation with me.
Damn.
So I brought Louiza in, especially because I see her as one of the only leaders who's speaking about this with so much truth.
Oh,
and yeah. And what we're going to talk about today is really impact versus intention.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the spiritual community, intention is everything.
Yeah, right. and
yet there's an impact. It's like, every thing that you do in life is going to have some sort of a reaction from things that are outside of you, right? We have cause and we have reaction. And we as leaders need to be aware of what those things are. But the question always becomes, well, am I responsible for the impact that what I said had on some or a lot of people? Right? That's the question.
Yeah. And it's a nuanced one.
Yes.
Right? Which is why we're dedicating a podcast to it. Do you want me to give you my direct spiel? We can dive into all the things, but this is ultimately how I feel about this. Can I just go right there?
Yeah, get spicy.
All right, cool. So intention versus impact. First and foremost, I will put the little asterisks, right? That we have to hold space for multiplicities when we talk about intention versus impact. So multiple things can be true, right? So are you as a leader always responsible for everything that you do? Absolutely, 100%. But that looks like different things. And when we're talking about intention and impact, that is very important. So can you have the best of intentions and still be problematic and hella harmful and have a truly harmful impact? Absolutely. Can you have the best of intentions and happen to impact somebody on a very personal level and not actually have caused, right, like quote unquote general, when we're talking about harm, we're talking about like overall like oppressive blind spots, like,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of stuff? Also, yes. Can you have really evil intentions and or like poor intentions and never quote unquote negatively impact somebody? Also, yes.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And what I mean by that is we talk about, like, I'll break that down. So can you have evil and what I call evil intention? So can you be a like profit over people type of leader?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And will people never think that they're being harmed by you because they don't necessarily see it or feel it, or like they're like, oh, I'm making money and this person's great. Sure. But I still think that that's somebody that had bad intentions. Right. And
Right.
so those people go under the radar. Then there's the people that are like, oh, I'm so well intentioned and like love and light and whatever. Right. But they're behaving out of blind spots. They're behaving out of, right, colonized narratives. They're behaving out of privilege. And so they're inherently either dehumanizing other folks or gaslighting or spiritual bypassing, and they're causing harm.
Mm-hmm.
100% your
Yeah.
responsibility to fix that.
Yeah.
Because in that particular model of this, the person, right? So let's just call them leaders, like, or the person
Sure.
that's causing
Yeah.
the impact, right? So the leader should have done their decolonization work, their anti-racism work, their unpacking of privilege, their understanding of systems of oppression, and have moved it into a space where they can honor people's humanity if they're
Mm-hmm.
going to then be like a leader or be visible,
Right.
or even just like, in any sort of power dynamic, if they're like in a position to impact somebody.
Mm-hmm.
They should have done that work to be able to show up and say, okay, I'm going to make sure that I'm constantly being inclusive, equitable, and honoring folks' humanity.
Mm-hmm.
So you shouldn't, if you are a leader and you are, right, like that person that people are looking to, you should have already done your prerequisites, right? Like, how
Mm-hmm.
did you graduate without having done that work?
Right. It's like
And
what I
yet,
was saying today on Instagram. Like you can't. eh, People are in such a rush to be seen as a leader that they bypass the work that it takes to actually be a leader.
yes. Oh, I think maybe. Oh, I did repost that. Yes, I reposted that one. I loved that because exactly that, right? Like,
Yeah.
folks are out here like, oh yeah, or the like, they're seen as leadership because they're influencers or whatever. They have like visibility,
Yeah.
but they've bypassed the work. And so if you're that person and then you're causing harm, yeah, you're problematic, and it is your responsibility. And the reason it's your responsibility is because you skipped the fundamental steps necessary to truly be a leader.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have the third group, which is what we're going to dive into
Mm-hmm.
today.
Yes.
You have folks that are very well intentioned, that have done their work, that are mindful, that honor other people's humanities, and that are, saying the thing, doing their jam, whatever. They're out here, they're visible. And sometimes there is a negative impact on a personal, like an individual person.
Right.
Can it happen? Yeah. Do I step on people's feet sometimes when I'm walking down the street? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
It
Same.
happens, right?
Yep.
My intention wasn't to step on their foot.
Mm-hmm.
Is the impact that I stepped on it and then they were caused pain? Sure. And did I own that the interaction happened?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. But am I going to take responsibility in some sort of way that it now means something about me as a human that was walking down the street? Yeah, that's going to be a no for me, dog.
Mm-hmm.
No, absolutely not. Right? So to like bring this into our space,
Mm-hmm.
we operate in a space where we have tons of visibility, right? Like we're saying things all the time. The
All the
internet,
time.
people
Yeah.
are like watching all the time. And I feel like a lot of people are watching more so for this moment where they're like, ooh, she's like so well intentioned, but the
Yeah.
impact, like she fucked up, like got her. No,
Yeah.
no, ma'am. Like
Mm-hmm.
let's chill out. But so we're very visible and we say things and we share things and we're also human.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes things happen. Sometimes individuals respond and react to the things that we say. And
Yeah.
there's this moment, this is where the nuance happens, right? And as leaders, it's our responsibility to say, let me assess for a moment. Is the thing that I did or said inherently problematic? Is it riddled in blind spots? Is it, right, harmful in some sort of way? Have I negated somebody's human experience, or have I placed a valuation on them based on their identities?
Mm-hmm.
If the answer is no, then I hate to break it to everyone listening, but that means that if you have a problem, that's actually a you problem. That's not the
Mm-hmm.
person who said it's problem.
Yeah. So let's go
Refine that
super,
one.
yeah.
Yeah.
Let's
Yeah.
unpack just that one.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because I think a lot of people, this is where they get tripped up.
Mm-hmm.
For me, the way in which I see it just from my own personal experience in my own journey of being someone who was a very highly triggered, constantly reacting, quite often overreacting. I grew up in a reactive family. That's how we communicated with each other. I didn't know any better. And
Mm-hmm.
in my personal journey, I learned how to see my triggers as almost like an invitation to view the wound underneath it. Like what is
Mm-hmm.
actually being triggered in this situation,
Mm-hmm.
which then it made it about me versus about the other person. The other
Right.
person could be acting wrong. The other person could be showing up in a way that, isn't necessarily nice or right. And they are poking me in a very sore spot. And that sore spot within me is a spot that I get to heal.
Mm-hmm.
And when it's not healed, people will continue to poke at it intentionally or unintentionally, consciously or unconsciously. And so through my journey, I've learned, my triggers are my responsibility. Every
Yeah.
time I get triggered, I look at it as an invitation to get curious about what lies beneath it. Now, in leadership and in the work that I do, what I've also learned is not everyone's going to agree with me. And sometimes I'm going to step on people's toes. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes those toes are going to be super fucking sensitive.
Yep.
And it's really easy for me to then go back into a reactive place because this person's reacting. What's
Mm-hmm.
harder is to take a breath and
Mm-hmm.
come from a place of responding to that reaction and understanding what is mine to own in this and what is mine to not own.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the place where many people get shit twisted, just like I did a few weeks ago with a Baby Yoda meme.
Which I'm going to say I still think is hilarious every time I see it.
I'm going to tell
Would you like to read
everyone,
it? Yeah.
I'm going to
Read it.
read what this meme said. So we have context. So I
Mm-hmm.
posted a meme of Baby Yoda, and Baby Yoda looks really sad. And the text on the meme says, and I'm going to try and say this without laughing because I still think it's so funny. Okay. Okay. When you can't go to the Jimmy Gym to get Buffy buff, so instead you get fatty fat from your quarantine snacky snacks.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
I love it because it's true.
I love this. Like for everyone who follows me on social, like, like I am a 5 a.m. workout with my fucking trainer. I was working on my 6-pack and my pull-ups before all this went
Man, I know
down.
you're upset.
I'm super
Because
upset
your
about
pull-up
not
game
going.
was like really,
My pull-up
really
game was right there. I was
progressing.
right there.
It was.
And so now I'm at home. We're trying to make this like home gym, and the equipment's coming really slow via Amazon.
Yep.
And
Ditto.
And, when you're sitting around at home, there's a lot of snacks and you kind of impulse buy when you're at the stores because they don't have enough of anything. And
Mm-hmm.
so, yes, I have gained weight.
Yeah.
So this is true for me. But the word fatty fat got people twisted. It triggered people. Those were the toes that I stepped on, the fatty fat.
I'm like, tag me in.
Tag it. Come on in, Louisa. You're
So here's the thing, y'all. Okay. So I want to, because you said something really important right before that I want to call back to.
Yes.
That every opportunity is a unique moment to pause
Mm-hmm.
and assess what is yours to own and what is not.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we all do that, right? As the person with the intention that caused the impact, and as the person that felt the impact or felt triggered or traumatized or offended or sensitive to something, right?
Right.
That responsibility is actually on both parts.
Yes.
So that's the first step, is that folks really swear like, oh, if I'm reactionary, if I'm in the reactionary position, something is being done to me, then it absolves me of responsibility. No.
Yes, I know. And that's the energy that is, and I want everyone to really hear that piece, because maybe you've been there too. I know I have.
For sure.
Like, and you think like, oh my God, yes, this has triggered me. I'm in the right, they're in the wrong. And you completely bypass the invitation even for you to dive deeper into what is actually taking place here. Like, what's actually happening? What's the wound that's just been poked?
Exactly. So in moments like this, and we're just going to stick with the meme because it's such a good example and it's
Yeah.
real life, like it actually happened and played out.
Mm-hmm.
The meme is posted. Let's
Mm-hmm.
be very clear. The meme in and of itself places no value system on fatty fat, on buffy buff,
Mm-hmm.
on any of those things.
Mm-hmm.
This is a meme that is actually describing, very simply, if I don't go to the gym, if I go to the gym, I get buff. If I don't go to the gym and I continue to eat, science and biology literally determine that I gain weight. Like, you literally just gain weight.
Yes.
That's how your body works.
Mm-hmm.
So there's no value system placed here.
Mm-hmm.
And so if people are reacting, it's not because the meme said, I'm going to get fatty fat from my quarantine snacky snacks, and now no one will love me and I'll be ugly and I'll be alone forever, right? Like, it didn't say that. It ended right there. But people react because that narrative that they hold around their own wounds
Mm-hmm.
is what fills in the rest of that sentence.
Right.
Because they're being either triggered or re-traumatized or offended by
Mm-hmm.
this concept of like fatness. Because yes, again, this is where dualities come into play. Is it true that in our society, we absolutely have quote unquote fit or skinny privilege, that there is fat shaming, that as a social whole, there is bias when it comes to everything, right? Like
Yes.
purchasing clothes, healthcare, every aspect
Definitely.
of life.
Yes.
There are absolutely biases and there's absolutely limit to accessibility if you are considered fat, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is very true.
Mm-hmm.
And this meme did not feed into and or reinforce and or uplift any of it.
Right.
Sometimes it's okay to just say, I'm not a gym person, or like, I don't work out, or I don't get this. This
Right.
particular meme wasn't for me. Me, as somebody who is a previous athlete and dancer, just built a boxing gym in the corner of my house because that's like, I still train. Like,
Yep.
I literally posted a picture of my coach's 4-year-old son and was like, I've never been jealous of a 4-year-old. Because the 4-year-old is like at home coaching with coach, right? Like training with coach. And I'm like, ugh, like I'm itching in my quarantine, like
Yeah.
a little fiend. So I get it. For me, I'm like, oh, I resonate with that
Mm-hmm.
meme because we live a similar lifestyle. And when it
Mm-hmm.
comes to that, for folks who don't, like, you just need to own that that wasn't for you.
Mm-hmm.
And then you need to pause and say, and so this is where my this is what I tell all my clients, every single one of them, because I work directly in decolonization and liberation, and
Mm-hmm.
the whole world is full of triggers and traumas,
Yeah.
both collectively and individually.
Mm-hmm.
When you are reacting to something, regardless of whether it's a true trigger or just an emotional reaction to something, you need to take a minute and pause, and you need to ask yourself, what am I reacting to?
Yeah.
Why am I reacting to that?
Mm-hmm.
And where does this wound come from? So if I run through, and I'm saying this and I'm being really transparent because I know that people listening like will see me on the internet and they're like, but you pop off on everyone. Yeah,
Right.
but I do this, I go through this process first because there are moments where I realize, you know what? I'm not going to answer this person. Or I will say, I am very much like triggered or offended. I am not in a place to be able to have this conversation with you in the way that it needs to be had.
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
I've gone through that process, because the outcome of that is one of two things. Either one, okay, the thing that they said really truly was inherently problematic, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if the meme said, and now you are like a vile human and no one will love you.
Right.
Okay, yeah, Ruby, we got a problem. Why are you
Mm-hmm.
posting that shit? Right? Yes, that is a problematic. We need to look at your, unconscious bias around fatness.
Mm-hmm.
But if the answer to those three questions is, I have my own struggles and wounds around, body weight or image issues or whatever, and I'm reacting from those unhealed wounds, then you still get to say, like, I am reacting to this right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just want to be seen or whatever, or like I popped off and I'm recognizing that this comes from like my own wound that's unhealed.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where it stops. But the
Right.
problem is that people take it another level. And instead of owning that they're reacting out of their own wounds, which is their responsibility to own and heal,
Mm-hmm.
they want to absolve themselves of the responsibility to have to heal that wound. And so they flip it on the person that has done the thing,
Yep.
and they make the quote unquote evil, right, or the badness
Mm-hmm.
and the toxicity about that person versus what is still remaining inside of them.
True. They just haven't done their fucking work.
They haven't done their work. And so that's what happened, like, with the meme. You posted the meme. I don't know any of, like, I don't know people or their stories, right? Like, that
Mm-hmm.
responded. But all of a sudden it became about, in this case, it's you because you posted it, but all of a sudden it became
Right.
about you and like
Yep.
how you navigate and what you meant and your bias or your blind spots and your whatever. And I will say, can I be totally transparent with the listeners?
Yes.
Ruby and I have the relationship where if she did some wild shit,
Oh
I
yeah,
would
she would tell me.
absolutely text her.
Yes.
I would have been
She
like,
would.
I would have been, no, ma'am. Like, yeah, maybe you do need to submit some sort of public
Yeah.
apology or whatever. But we talked through it and I'd explain it to her. And, like, I'm the first one because I know that she would do that for me
Right.
and has been like, with that one, I think you're stretching. And I'm
Yeah.
like, okay, all right. Okay. And literally, that's all I can say is like, okay, right? Like, cool, noted. So when I say that, like, when we go through this example and it's like, I'm looking at it and I very much was like, no, let's just unpack how you're feeling about this because this
Mm-hmm.
was flipped on you in a really nasty way
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because it
and
wasn't inherently problematic.
right. And there was that we're just talking about one comment that was made on it, but it was shared in a way where it was in the share. It said, here's the problem with spiritual leaders, blah, 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 privilege, blah, 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 blah,
Oh,
fat
that's
bias,
right.
blah, blah, blah,
Yeah.
blah. So there was like a whole other thing. So let me be super honest with everyone else, is like when I saw all this, when it was all happening, the person who had commented is someone that I had been in a mastermind with. We're not super tight. And at the same time, I still care about her feelings. And I went into a reactive state when I saw the comment and when I saw the shares, and I was like, oh shit, did I just fuck up? And
Mm-hmm.
was this like, should I not have shared something that said fatty fat? Would it have been better if I said just gained weight? I'll come back to that in a second. And so I took responsibility for that person's trigger and replied back to them, and then made a whole other post on Facebook saying, just really just recognizing, hey, like, I posted this Baby Yoda meme. I didn't know that it was gonna, I can't remember what I wrote, like it was gonna offend people. For that, I am sorry. And that thread started blowing up. And in the meantime, the original post and the original comment, they started coming back at me. And then I started feeling both sides of the equation, like, holy shit, did I just react off a reaction? Because our
Mm-hmm.
reactions, we think of reactions often as like fiery energy,
Yeah.
whereas my reaction was like, oh shit, like, did I just fuck up? The people pleaser came out in me,
Yeah.
and that in itself can also be a reaction. right? The reactions don't have to be fiery and spicy and loud and brash. They can also be like scared and timid and come across as humble when really you're trying to people please. And that's what happened. And that's what I did. And as soon as the thread started popping off and I started getting DMs from this person and clearly realized she was in a reactive state and clearly saw the way in which I was reacting to her reactive state, I stopped. I was like, I'm not commenting on anything. I'm turning off my social media. I'm not going on Facebook for a day or two. And I did that just to let the storm calm down. And then when I came back to it, even with fresh eyes, knowing like, you know what, this is a clear situation of your triggers, your responsibility. And I know that I reacted to the reaction, but for me to go back then and just start and even comment on that would have just poked the bear even more. And so I decided to just leave it alone. That was a decision that I made because I was like, this is one of those situations where I'm never going to quote unquote win, because there's always going to be someone from this group of people who had shared and commented that are going to find something wrong with me because they see me as someone who's privileged. And there's no point in, do I really want to have that conversation? No. So that's that.
I mean, I also want to like really explicitly say, because I always think about whenever we're talking and how it can potentially like step on toes, right? Because this is what leaders do. We actually think through this process. I want to really explicitly say, we're not saying that there's a problem or that there's anything wrong with being triggered or offended or reacting.
No,
you get to have your feels. You get to be human. You like, that's literally the point. We honor the human experience. But there's a distinct difference between saying, like, if I reacted, you know, and I'll just use myself as an example so people aren't like, oh, they're just, you know, privileged. I had like a lot of like hormonal thyroid issues like when I was younger. And so like, even though I was an athlete, I like gained a ton of weight. Like we couldn't figure out, like I couldn't lose it. I have no pictures from like a period of my life because I had so much like shame and like all these other things. I did all of my work around that, all of my body image work, like body neutrality work, cool. And so if I had not have done that work, seeing a post that said the word fat, immediately I would have just been like, oh my God, she's talking about me. Like, you know, like I probably, all those wounds would have been poked and I would have reacted.
Yeah.
Now the difference is that I can react. I'm allowed to react. And I can even comment and say, yo, like reading this, I'm noticing that like I'm having either a visceral or emotional reaction to it. And, you know, the word fat is just like not sitting with me well. And like, damn, like this really got me fucked up. I can say that.
Right.
And then Ruby's response as a thought leader and as a person who has done their work is to say, yo, I can totally see how that would happen. Like I'm witnessing you in that. And like, I'm holding space for your experience. Cool. End of conversation. And in that moment, you've had a person who was triggered, who owned their trigger. And you've had the person that caused, right, the impact saying like, I'm not going to take responsibility for the trigger, but like, I honor and witness your humanity and like live your life. Like, cool, do it. Right.
Yeah.
But that's not what happens.
No.
Right.
What happens is people will come at it and then make you the scapegoat for their shit.
Exactly.
It's like, you're the reason why I'm feeling this way. You did something wrong.
Right.
Bypassing any of their own shit.
Right.
And their reaction.
Which, just as much as spiritual leaders can be super problematic and gaslight and spiritual bypass and victim blame, like folks that walk around as, I don't know, spiritual followers, if you're a leader, you're a follower, spiritual, those in the spiritual community, like are just as capable of internalizing those methodologies and doing it within themselves. Like to me, I'm like, you just spiritually bypass your own experience.
Yep.
Like you just did it to yourself.
Yeah.
Because this was an opportunity for you to do some noticing.
Yes. Yeah. This was an opportunity for you to observe yourself. this was an opportunity, and that's why I always say it's an invitation. Like, it's an
Yes.
invitation for you to dive deeper into yourself. It's an invitation for you to do that work so that in the future you aren't feeling triggered when you
Mm-hmm.
see words like fat without
Mm-hmm.
the full context, and right now, Louise and I thought this was an even more pertinent conversation to have right now, because
Yeah.
people are in a reactive state with this
100%.
pandemic. Like, people are in a reactive state. It feels like the reactivity is almost amplifying the longer we're in it, because people are getting stir crazy in their
Yeah.
home. And we're seeing I mean, we've talked about it. Like, we're noticing so many people coming online and
Mm-hmm.
sharing things from a reactive place
Yep.
and not even realizing, because again, reactions and reactivity doesn't always necessarily look like loud, rash,
Mm-hmm.
fiery, spicy. Like, it doesn't look like that all the time. It
Yep.
can be veiled in politeness and in love and light and in quote unquote facts. I got the fact.
Yeah. Big quotations.
Big quotations, because everyone right now is an expert in immunology. So
That's another conversation. But yeah, right. You're all MD.
right. And so right now is that much more important for all of us, to be hyper aware and to step into the role of the observer, both to observe others, but to observe
Mhm.
ourselves and the way in which we're showing up. So important right now.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how many times I'm going to say, well, I'll probably say this every day until we're out of it. Like, this is an unprecedented time that we're living
Yes.
in.
Yep.
It's unprecedented. None of us have all of the tools necessary to get through this
Mm-hmm.
in like the most peaceful and calm and stable way we possibly can. Even those of us that have done a shit ton of work
Mm-hmm.
and like are, and have a hefty toolkit, because we've never been here. I didn't even know that I needed to use some of the tools that I have, or
Yep.
like, or like use them in conjunction with each other. I'm like, oh, that's new,
Mm-hmm.
right? We've never been here. And
Mm-hmm.
so right now more than ever is a crucial time to really, I mean, I say opportunity, you say invitation, but like to dive into that opportunity and that invitation to like slow down,
Yeah.
pay attention, notice what is really like pressing on. I call it like the cheat code to detonation, right? Like they
Mm-hmm.
just know that code,
Right.
right? Like what is setting off the bomb inside of you.
Yeah.
Like, spend some time with yourself since you can't spend time with other people. Like, this
Right.
is like, I'm laughing because it's like, I don't know, the universe is really talking to us right now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really is. And I was noticing that the other day. Like, I actually went through what feels like it's the loss of a friendship throughout this whole everything that's been happening. That's not guaranteed, but right now that's what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been so much of me, like, every day waking up feeling triggered by it, and
Yeah.
me masking it in the like woe is me sadness,
Yeah.
right? And then trying to talk myself into how not even like I'm right, they're wrong, but I've been catching myself writing posts, and I'm like,
Mm.
shit, I'm writing this about them.
Mm.
Right.
Mm.
And then I'll delete it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'll delete it because I'm like, shit, like, I'm doing what, like, I'm reacting right now from
Yeah.
my pain, from my sadness, from my
Yeah.
hurt.
Right.
And that's why, like, I share this with you, because I want everyone to understand, like, this reactivity that we're talking about can look like a lot of different things. It can look like you trying to quote unquote teach your audience something,
Mm-hmm.
when really it's coming from that place of hurt,
Yeah.
of unresolved wounding, because
Mm-hmm.
you're triggered from something that happened a few days ago. And so we get to take responsibility, not just with how we're showing up for ourselves, but how we're showing up for other people, how we're what our messaging is saying right now,
Yeah.
what we're sharing, what we're choosing to share online, is what we're choosing coming from a reactive place. right? Or is it coming from a place where we're actually able to just share and be responsible with what we're sharing? You know, the word responsibility has come up so much for me. Something that I wouldn't say never, but um, it's always been something that I think about, but not as much as I have now. The
Mm,
social responsibility, the
yeah.
responsibility that comes with every single thing that I'm sharing and everything that I'm speaking to, and even the comments that I'm doing, even what I'm liking. Like,
Yeah.
all of that is coming with this responsibility right now because people are so reactive. And um, when we look beyond the reactions, we can actually clearly say that everyone is just really in their wounds right now. And so we get to have compassion for that we're all in the same place. We're all in this wounded place.
Yeah. Every single one of us.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's
We're not dismissing us. Like, we're in this too.
no, yeah, like, oh, I'm in it.
I'm
I'm
in it,
in it, right?
in
But
the thick of it.
right. But the difference is, to your point, is that it is a practice of ours, and we're not the only ones. Like, we're in community with a bunch of people that are
Yeah.
like this. Like, it is a practice of ours to do that noticing, right? To say,
Mhm.
like, oh, I'm this post, like, maybe I shouldn't post this right now because
Mhm.
clearly this is where I'm writing it from, right? Or
Mhm.
like, why am I writing it from this perspective, or what have you? And so I really, I want to really drill this in again. It is everybody's responsibility on any side of dynamic to take responsibility for their action and own their own reactions.
Mhm. Yes.
100%.
Mhm.
Because if you can take responsibility for your action and then own your reaction, then even if you do have to come to a place where maybe you do need to follow like a restorative justice, process to restore harm, if harm truly was caused,
Mhm.
it's going to be productive. People are going to be humanized. Everyone is going to be seen
Mhm.
because nobody is going to be there weaponizing their triggers and traumas against other people,
Yeah.
because that's what's happening is
Mhm.
people have not healed from whatever their right like life has dealt them or whatever experiences they've had,
Mhm.
and that sits as ammunition inside of them, and it becomes a weapon.
Mhm. Yeah,
and
it's
and
true.
that doesn't just then hurt other people on the right, like outside of you. Ultimately, like, you are really sitting there hurting yourself.
Yeah, you're creating more of a distance between you and your healing.
100%.
It's like you're continuing to press your own button.
Yeah. So if you take nothing from this conversation, I beg of you to take those three steps, like pause,
Mhm.
ask yourself, like, what am I reacting to?
Mhm.
Why am I reacting to it? And where is that coming from?
Mhm.
Because sometimes the where is it coming from is, oh, that person is like racist, or that was misogynist, or that was transphobic, or that was fat shaming or fat phobic.
Mhm.
Yeah, maybe it was. And then but you're still going to own your reaction, and you're going to take responsibility for it, and that still ultimately determines how you respond to the person. Because what I love to run around just like actually verbally thrashing everybody that is like hella problematic or saying things out of any sort of phobia or hate or blind spots, sure, it
Right.
would be really easy. It would
Mhm.
be super easy. But that's not, one, productive. Two,
Mhm.
that is not what integrous leadership is.
Mhm.
And three, that does not do anything to actually move us forward as a collective with our unconscious nervous system, to move our unconscious collective nervous system forward towards healing.
Yeah. It's
Right?
like the difference between shaming and teaching.
Exactly.
You can shame someone and no one learns a damn thing,
Right.
or through, pausing and reassessing, you can use that as an opportunity to teach, coming from a
Yeah,
place of really seeing the other person as a human being.
absolutely. And like in this example, you got shamed,
Yes.
which, like, as somebody that like cares about you, right? Like I was late to the party. Like I saw it hella late after all the things already happened. And I'm actually really glad I did because
And after I reacted myself, yes.
right, like days. And I will say like the universe doesn't make mistakes, because one of my things, for example, that I know about myself is like when it comes to me, I can go through my 3-step process. When it comes to people that I like really care about and ride for, I definitely will react.
Right.
Right, like because and that's a me thing that like again, and so that's in those moments where I'm like, oh girl, pause, because you're gonna bang on people, you're gonna make it worse. Like it's not that deep, right? But I will say like the way that it happened, you were shamed.
Mhm.
And even if, let's just say, what you posted actually was problematic, it could have been a really beautiful teaching moment.
Yeah,
It could have
totally.
been a moment for you to, not requiring anyone else to do emotional labor, but it could have been a moment where someone said to you, hey, maybe you have some noticing you need to do. Maybe you have
Right.
some blind spots that you need to work through.
Teaching
Or
versus
maybe,
shaming.
exactly. And then how much better of a leader would that have made you? And how much more impactful could you have been to the people that actually listen to you, to be
Mhm.
able to turn around and say, look what I just learned about myself, and let me
Mhm.
model this behavior for you.
Yeah.
Instead, shaming, you close down. Now we have to have this whole like, right? Like, what
Yeah.
purpose did this serve?
Exactly. Exactly. And it was like this brings me back to like a memory of wow, God, when was this? A few years ago now. When Black Lives Matter came out. What was that now? Like 4 years ago? I think
Black Lives
four.
Matter came 2014 after,
2014.
yeah,
Yeah.
after Michael Brown was
Yeah.
killed. So
2000.
6
Yeah.
years.
Okay. Wow.
It goes
Okay.
fast.
Yeah, it goes fast. So I was one of those POCs who literally shared the hashtag all lives matter. Okay. So
Mhm.
when I did that,
Now we know better.
now we know better. Um, yeah, I had a lot of people responding in very hateful, shaming ways, but I didn't understand. I didn't understand it. That's all this was. I didn't understand. And then one of my friends from up north, she used that as a teaching moment. She's like one of my closest friends. And she's like, Ruby, like, here's an article that really outlines what this is. And it was a super informative article. And then she wrote her thoughts and shared from this like super constructive place, knowing that, oh, this isn't like Ruby's not this like racist fucking person. She just probably doesn't know any better. So let me just teach her. And her one comment on that post, the one comment shifted me forever. And from that moment on, I saw the importance of Black Lives Matter. I understood the history. I understood all of it because she took the time to teach. And that helped me become a better leader. Right. Whereas all the other people were just shaming me for what I was saying. And I had no idea. Like I didn't see it. I didn't see I didn't see the connection. And
Mhm.
so we have to remember that when we see this stuff that's going on online right now, especially now, to use these as opportunities to teach, to inform, not to gaslight, not to shame, not to,
Mhm.
make someone feel bad, not to like bury someone, but instead to just use this as an opportunity to teach. That's it.
Right. Right. And the fact that it was one of your like closest friends, right? They like chose to do the emotional labor, like,
Right.
and so you had that. And sometimes it doesn't always have to look like that. It can also
No.
just look like, hey, you know what? Here's this article, and I
Yes.
suggest you read it, right? Like you already had the relationship of reciprocity. So like
Yes.
obviously she was gonna like hold you up
Mhm.
in that way. But what I'm saying, like, I also want to say that because I don't want anyone to try to use that as like the out of like, oh well, no one's gonna teach me. So because again,
Right.
it is
Right.
your
Yeah.
responsibility,
It
right?
is.
So I mean, I think ultimately it comes down to it's gonna sound really simple and maybe a little assholey, and that's okay. Um, like you need to start owning your shit. Not like you, but
Yeah.
people. Like people really need to start owning all of their own shit.
Mhm.
Period.
Yeah.
Because here's the truth at the end of the day. At the end of the day, even when I do interact with people that truly are harmful,
Mhm.
even if they quote unquote didn't mean it, right? I'm not a racist. Oh, but you just said a really racist thing and this was the impact, right? Like, it doesn't matter what, right? The impact was truly harmful. And then I let them know that it was harmful. And maybe they double down on their harm, which in that moment lets me know, okay, this cannot be a teaching moment, because
Right.
you're actually committed. Just as much as I've taken responsibility for what's happening over here, that's my cue that you will not take responsibility.
Right.
Right? So now you're doubling down on your harm. That's fine. It is still my responsibility to have done my own work, to be able to back out of the situation, leave it alone, protect my own peace, and soothe my own nervous system.
Yes. I'm so glad you mentioned that.
It is still my responsibility.
Yeah, because I think it's really easy at that point when the person goes into the, when you step up and create an opportunity for there to be a teaching moment and the other person is still in a reactive state, to understand it is not your job to shift them into a different state. Only they can do that. Right. It's just like you can't make someone quit smoking. They have to want to do it.
Yeah.
Like, and I feel like that's what we're seeing a lot of right now, because
absolutely,
especially with the pandemic, everyone has their own opinion about what's going on. And then these threads turn into these like verbal wars. And it's like, listen, if this person is so steadfast in their opinion that they're not willing to see anything else, it is not your responsibility to try and convince them or persuade them of any other way. But it is, you get to be responsible for yourself and honor your boundaries and understand, just like Louisa said, when to back away, when to exit. And that's that.
Period. And that's why I said, like, people, that's, and I say that knowing that people who either have not or are not ready to do your work, and it's okay, you need to do the work because it's hard, right? Y'all listen to Ruby, you know the process. And so fine, maybe you're not ready, but folks that have not done their work, this whole episode is going to be a full trigger for them. And so instead, I suggest that you, even listening to this episode, ask yourself, what are you reacting to? Where does that come from? Why are you reacting that way? And then take this opportunity to start doing your work. Maybe you're not ready for a full coach, but there's a lot of free content out there right now, courses and books and self-help and whatever. Take this opportunity just in this episode. If you're feeling a kind of way, this is a you problem. It's not actually our responsibility.
Yes. Mic fucking drop. Booyah.
And I invite you to do your work.
And there's, again, this isn't coming from a place of trying to shame you.
Nah.
Right? Like, I still have a ton of shit like to work on. And right? And there are still times when I will even have friends call me out on things and I'm triggered by it and I'm not ready, and I'll go into stubborn mode, and it might take me a week, and then I'll come back to them and say, okay, you know that thing that you said? Yeah, I do need to work on that. Yeah. There's no shame in this. It's not that we're better than you, or so-and-so is better than so-and-so. Like, it's not about that. We're all in this together. That's it. Like, I always like to say, like, we're all on the same journey. We're just at different points in our journeys. And the journeys aren't linear. Right? Like, the journeys aren't linear, like time. Like, they're expansive. They go off into all these detours, and we're all on these different like detours and parts of our journeys. And so we need to look at each other from that stance and understand, like, if someone's reacting, it's coming from a wounded, hurt place. We get to look at that with compassion and then take responsibility for what we can control. Yes. That's it. Yeah. Cool. Is there anything else that you want to add, that you want to make sure that it just like really drills home? A little extra spicy charm.
Yeah, I know, right? I will say this. The other thing I will say is, for folks who do hold privileged identities, right? And this isn't talking about, like, because a lot of people throw around privilege because they see somebody's life that looks really nice and they're like, oh, that person's privileged.
Yeah.
Nah,
like
bro.
me.
Right. Right. But like, let's be clear about the ways in which you're marginalized, actually, right? Anyways, that's a whole nother episode. What I will say is, if you hold a privileged identity, and I'm not just talking about race, right? I'm talking about the fact that, for example, like, I'm cisgendered female. And so in the, in the dynamic of gender, like, I'm privileged because I don't hold a trans identity.
Right.
So when you're in moments and it is truly like, there's a power dynamic and you hold the privileged identity, it is extra important for you to stop and pay attention and take responsibility and stop talking.
Mm-hmm.
Do more listening.
Mm-hmm.
And really do a lot of noticing, because a lot of people are reacting from their what I call privilege pains and
Mm-hmm.
privilege points because they don't want to own that part of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And so they end up reacting. They can't listen. They can't notice. And then what ends up happening, because, I call the thing like it is with the
Mm-hmm.
Baby Yoda post,
Mm-hmm.
from my understanding, again, that just from looking at people's pages and Facebooks, I always find it very interesting that those that truly hold the most privileged identities in the society will be the first ones to try to find anything to try to discredit folks who hold marginalized identities
Mm-hmm.
by calling them some sort of like phobic. Because they
Yeah.
can't call you racist,
Mm-hmm.
but they can call you fat phobic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I just really want to name that, because I think that's an important dynamic that we didn't really dive into,
Mm-hmm.
but is for the noticing. Like, if you hold a privileged identity, the fourth question you need to ask yourself is, am I actually reacting to what is happening? Or am I reacting to the fact that my privilege isn't automatically entitling me to the win?
Mm. So good.
That is my last little
That's
nugget.
your spicy charm.
It's my little nugget. Spicy charm nuggets. Oh
Yeah.
my God, that is a cereal.
Yeah, it is a cereal.
It
I also feel like that's like a podcast.
really, really
Spicy
is.
Charms with Louiza Doran.
Yeah,
Yeah.
with Louiza Doran.
Well,
Kellogg, call me. Call me.
well, why don't you tell everyone listening
Yes.
where they can find you online, and make sure you also mention this awesome new little membership thing you got
Oh, my
going on.
Patreon. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So, okay, you can find me online on Facebook at the Louiza Doran.
I'll have
On
these
Instagram
links
at
in the
yes.
show notes, just making sure.
Perfect.
Yeah.
According to Louise, my website is louisadoran.com. I have a Patreon now. And on Patreon, there are 3 membership levels. You guys can like dive in and check it out. Super easy. It's patreon.com/Louiza Doran. But I'm super excited about it because I have been working on a show called At the Intersection, which is an intersection of all of our lived experiences and all of our identities through the decolonization process, and the liberation process. So everything from like, literally like racism to parenting, like everything. And it's super dope. And it is a Patreon only show. So because production takes money. And so it made sense to do it this way. But I'm really excited about it because it's going to be some like really amazing conversations and opportunities for Q&A in a community of folks that are all, even though they're different on different points in their journey, they're all on the same journey.
Yeah.
So it's finna be litty. And there's like, other options too, but I'm super excited about that.
Yeah.
It's
really,
I've
really
been
awesome.
holding on to for a while.
Yeah, I was just telling Louisa before we hit record that I was looking at it, and it's so good. So if you do have an interest in diving deeper into what we talked about today, I highly recommend going over to Louisa's Patreon and checking that out. So again, that link and more will be in the show notes. Louisa, thank you so much. I just
Thank you
adore
for
you.
having me.
I love that we can call
Ditto.
each other out
I know.
and also like have each other's backs.
100%. Because that's how it's supposed to work.
Yes.
When we each take responsibility for ourselves and also each other. Because
Yes.
community matters.
It does. Well, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining me and Louisa on today's Thought Leader, where we're challenging you to rise up, speak up, and create a movement. Make sure you drop a rating and a review on iTunes and share this with a friend. And if you have any questions about this episode, you can reach out to either of us on Instagram, Facebook, wherever. My handle is @IamRuby. And I will see you back here on Monday for a brand new episode of today's Thought Leader.